AI Powered RevOps, where the learning never stops. Hosted by Sandy Robinson, she's leveling up your ops. From data to deals, she reveals how AI really pops. Real talk, real playbooks, no fluff, just jaw drop. So plug in, turn it up, let the insights flow. You're tuned to AI Powered RevOps, now let's start the show.
Hey everyone, I am Sandy Robinson, your host of AI Powered RevOps. Today on AI Powered RevOps, we are here bridging the gap between tactical execution and high-level strategy. I'm thrilled to be joined by Jordan Shaheen, Head of Revenue and Strategy Operations at Candid. Jordan is a true heavyweight in the community. He's an ambassador for the Revenue Operations Alliance and was recognized as 2024 Rebel of RevOps. He recently guided Candid through a massive business transformation, pivoting their entire model from direct to consumer to B2B, a feat that requires serious operational rigor. We're going to break down how AI is the lever that finally allows RevOps leaders to stop fixing broken data and start driving company strategy. Jordan, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Sandy, for having me. Super excited to chat.
Awesome. Well, tell us a little bit about your background, industry, and what you're doing in RevOps.
Yeah, so I've been at my current company for almost 8 years now. It'll be 8 years next month. So been here in a variety of roles, from when we were very small, working out of a 2-bedroom apartment, to now being a company that operates in multiple countries with hundreds of employees. So it's been really fun. Part of that has been helping build up our early on direct-to-consumer product. It was pretty green in the space. We work with dental products, so we actually create clear aligners similar to other clear aligners, think Invisalign and things like that. I helped us build out different parts of our institution as we grew in the direct-to-consumer business. So building out our support team, helping create our team that helps patients clinically once they get into treatment, our insurance processing team, in different functions of our sales team, moved to Columbus for a year, created a headquarters there where we had a few hundred people at its peak, and then helped at the early part of the pandemic transition Candid into a B2B model, which is where we've existed ever since. And since taking on that side, I've really developed what is now our revenue operations team. It's gone through a few iterations, and today I focus on a number of items, whether it be partnership, relationship management with some of the corporate partnerships we have in the industry, focus a lot on AI and how we can utilize that to make our processes more efficient, our insights more accurate, and overall strategic lens a lot more useful to both our team, our sales team, and the executives. And really that kind of encapsulates a lot of what we do right now. And it's been an exciting, last year or two, really starting to dip into the AI front with all of the spectrum of things that word means and brings to various people these days. But yeah, it's super excited to continue to develop that part of the world. And it's an exciting part of the industry.
It really is. And it's great to hear your career journey at Candid. I know we've been connected in the industry. You've been on a previous podcast, and I love seeing the evolution of what you're doing over there at Candid. I see all of your posts, and you're just really diving in. And I'm super interested to understand a little bit more, getting into the weeds today. Before we start on that, tell me one personal interest that maybe your work friends don't know about you, so people can get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah, no, it's fair. I saw this as a question. I was thinking about it ahead of time, which is I'm pretty much an open book, so it's hard to find things. But the thing that I resorted to in my mind is, before I actually got into the startup world, I worked in professional baseball as a sportscaster. So totally different world, totally different job description. But it was a fun job when I was very, very young. Obviously kind of grew out of that. But yeah, so a former part of me has always been into sports and continues to be in my free time.
I love it. That explains why you're so great on camera and speaking. I've seen you out on the speaking circuit, so that gives me a little bit of background there. I myself was a martial arts person, so I did a lot of I taught at a school for years, and had a lot of that speaking and getting into that type of thing. So really interesting. So appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, of
How did
course.
you get started over at Candid, right? So everybody is at one spectrum of the AI adoption curve. There are folks who super early adopters, people that are dipping their toes in right now, getting started. How did you get started with AI, even if it's not on the RevOps side? How did you start diving in?
Yeah, I think we first, at least my team's introduction into it, really started around data analysis and data enrichment as we started to develop our ideal customer profile, determine what actions our sales team was taking or is taking that made impact in the positive way, made no impact, trying to strategize around that element. And in order to do that, we first really dipped our toes in the data analysis and data enrichment pool. As we got into that, we got a bit more comfortable with prompting. We did a lot more research on the different facets of AI available right now, thinking about can we either replace processes or augment human processes. And so then we started implementing it on our sales side, on some of our partnership relations sides, and have really expanded that view. But I think we really started using it for our own selfish purposes, which was how can we get more surrounding context on data from, characteristics, publicly available data inside internal metrics and things like that. And so that gave us a good start, and then we kind of blossomed from there.
What kind of tools did you start out with? Were you doing some homegrown building or did you, buy a tool? How did you approach
Yeah,
that?
it's a great question. So we started early on with a tool called Clay, which is a mixture of just data enrichment and actual, has a great AI agent, and took a course or two on prompt writing, which kind of got me a little bit more comfortable with that. And so we use that first to really enrich data. And then you can throw a lot of it with context into ChatGPT. One of the things I love is using a box and whisker plot, which really gives you the ability to analyze impact without trying to incorporate and skew your data with outliers, which we all have, whether it be from bad data, odd customer deals, whatever it might be. And then I think over time, what we utilized on that side of things is the ability to fast process and action data as needed. So for the most part, a lot of our data enriched actions take place in a daisy chain that we've built internally. So with things like Zap, with things like Clay, obviously, another one being RB2B, which I love, is a website fall off capture. So anybody who goes to your website but maybe doesn't follow through on a action, you get to know who they are, get to know a little bit about them, and can utilize that in outreach campaigns. Sounds a little creepy, but it's not that bad. I promise. It's less than Instagram, which probably listens to all of us anyways.
Right.
But that's kind of been the first part. And I think those are some really easy ways to get into the AI space in a low stakes environment. I really think, even just taking data you have, throwing it into ChatGPT, going back and forth with it, pretend it's a data analyst, you'll get some great strategies out of it. And that'll start to make you trust it a little bit more, but also help get your initial prompt writing a little bit advanced. And then you'll see where these things connect over time.
Tell me a little bit about, for those who may not, maybe wondering, box and whisper. Can you drill down into that a little bit?
Yeah, so if you turn it on, well, if you're looking at the chart horizontally, it'll look like a box and then have little whiskers on the sides. But essentially, it enables you to see kind of where your median mean is on the data, where the outliers are, and kind of where the bell curve or chunk of things are sitting. So if you're looking at impact, right, let's say you have 100 accounts. Let's say there's 3 that have like 5x impact for some reason, and maybe we know why that is. And then there's some that like were epic failures, but again, we know why that is. As opposed to having those skew your idea of how impactful something is, this really allows you to look at the majority of the data that indicates kind of how positive, how negative something is. So an impact analysis, you can use it for a variety of things, but I really have come to like those. ChatGPT is great at making them. It would take you a while to make it yourself. So it's a really nice tool, and it gives you a more firm idea of what's happening. And it can also give you the confidence when you're talking to executives or other internal teams that you're not giving biased data, which is really easy to do, especially in a startup world where you don't have 100,000 customers. You may have a couple thousand. And if you have 20 accounts and a couple thousand that are way outside the norm, it's going to give you an unrealistic idea of either what's working, or it could give you a false flag and that it isn't working, but it actually is. So that's really where I like to use that. It's also just a very nice introductory way to do something that will save you time and give your strategy a bit more, it'll make it a little bit more unbiased and accurate.
Did you have any resistance at Candid or, security? Like, how did you approach getting started when you started building this stuff out?
It's a great question. I don't think, well, first of all, we had a lot of executive interest in it. So was given somewhat of a blank check, practically speaking, not necessarily financially, to go out and actually start kind of figuring out where we can utilize AI and where we can improve things. So again, on the data enrichment side, a few $100 a month, wasn't super expensive. You can enrich data without giving them a ton of, a ton of your industry secrets or anything like that. Even ChatGPT, if you give it relatively genericized titles and data context, it can do this analysis for you without giving it the keys to the kingdom. But again, both of them are fairly safe in that regard, where again, if you have anonymized data, it's not super clear. There's very little chance that someone's going to get in and do something with it. So I didn't have it on the privacy concern as much. Obviously, being in the medical space, if I were to start putting patient information in there and stuff like that, then it's a whole different ballgame with HIPAA constraints. But for basic customer data, we're able to do that. And I think people were really engaged. We've had a little bit of leeway. At first, the goal was to figure out what works and what doesn't. And so I think a lot of instances we started with, can we replace this entire role or this entire piece with AI? And what I've found is right now, most of the work of it, or most of the work done, at least internally here, isn't entirely replaceable by AI. So I think people's jobs are safe, which is a good thing and makes people feel a little bit more relaxed. I think what we can do is augment it. So we've developed a lot of tools internally to use either an aggregation of different available softwares into kind of our unique context through daisy chaining or kind of constructing your own little machine. Or there are some that are really good to start with that have a lot of value and can kind of do things on their own world. And so you don't have to use as many things. But as a process of that, we found out where we can go, where is not quite ready, and then figure out how we can keep humans doing the things that humans are really good at and prevent humans from having to do the really tedious, not fun pieces that we don't really need a human to do. And I think that's where it kind of comes in. You want an Iron Man suit, you don't necessarily want iRobot, at least right now. Maybe there's a future in which that changes, but that's what we've seen so far. Like, for example, we have on the sales side, let's think about it, really good tools like AI SDR, which is an AI SDR and is literally called AI SDR. We've had a lot of success with and really liked it. Outbound emails, whether they be warm emails, cold emails, and the ability to interact with people to set demos, for example. That's actually really effective. And we've seen that the accuracy of it and the impact is positive. On the other hand, we've tried cold outreach with via phone with 3 different vendors. Some of them way more utility than others. We use something called hex code. It's worked really well on warm inbounds, but in our line of work, what it helped us discover is that cold outreach just isn't successful. And so it wasn't that the tool wasn't working, but it just doesn't work for us now. And so I think a lot of the really important work you have to do is be constantly reflecting on what's working. And is it something that is a never? Is it something not now? Is it something, hey, this does it great, but it's not gonna fit our needs? And so for us, that's really been a big thing, is just helping figure out and contextualize what the landscape looks like. As you know, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and probably more thousands of AI companies out there that, claim they can do a million different things, but it comes through testing, investigation, and making sure that you really test things thoroughly. Because I think AI is a specific place where it's easy to move on before you've gotten the hang of the tool or the process. And so you might abandon things too early. But on the flip side, you also want to make sure you don't, bang your head against the wall too many times once you know it hurts.
Tell me a little bit, I'm curious, AI SDR. So I think this is definitely some low-hanging fruit, and the role of SDR is drastically evolving into being able to deploy agents. How did you get your AI SDR ready to actually do the work? Like, what kind of testing, what kind of setup was involved, validation, in order to see that success from it?
Yeah, so I truly believe with a lot of these tools, it's important to start small for operational testing and then scale to medium pretty quickly for efficiency or impact testing. So, in other words, if you're building this and you're either sending real emails out or you're trying to go back and forth with a certain type of lead, create a messaging, there are different campaigns you create. So, let's say I'm reaching out to people who are associated with Costco. Not really, but just for a simple example that people know. If I'm reaching out to people with Costco, I can use a certain type of messaging that can be more impactful than me just emailing a random person. So again, a random person who we don't know anything about. Right. So thinking about ways we can really make things lukewarm and reach out is really important, but you need that operational testing. Does the data sync work? Does the back and forth actually sound like a human? Does the AI actually have accurate recitation of your value props in a way that is conversational and actually drives towards a demo? And so that first part is just, let's make sure it works before you dump thousands of customers in there, because if it doesn't, that's now you've burned a bunch of bridges that you didn't do. But once you do that, I think the part that a lot of people fail to do is a lot of this stuff is at scale impact. So if you put, every week 50 leads into something, if you just think about pure numbers, right? Cold email or even warm email outreach response, it's going to be relatively low. So that's where I really think it's important to judge the efficacy of it only once you scale it to a medium amount, because just numerically and statistically, you're not going to see at least the things that AI can do right now at a tiny scale. And that's where I see so many companies abandon stuff early. So you set it up, you went through all this effort, which is at this point, yeah, it's some cost, but you have already spent it. Might as well give it an extra month or two to see how it works. And I think that's an easy place for people to go wrong, where, a couple extra months, a couple extra months, a couple extra weeks can really help you determine if something is working or isn't, beyond just kind of that initial testing reaction based on a small N.
Yeah, it's like hiring a person, right? So you're going to train them, onboard them, evaluate them, and give them feedback, right? So we have to think of it like that, and it does take time, and you need statistical credibility in order to really judge, whether or not the thing is going to work. I mean, that's really great feedback, because I think for a lot of us who are finalizing budgets, if they haven't been already, and working on, what's the next, what does staffing look like? To me, staffing looks a little bit different, right? So it's, how many agents do we have, and how do we support those agents? So along those lines, what is the makeup of your team in terms of a RevOps team? Has that changed your, who you're hiring or what roles you have on your team?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think as far as who I hire, I don't know that things have changed drastically. I've always been a fan in the RevOps role specifically. Throughout most of a company, you get barbell players, right? Someone who's on one end of a spectrum who's really good at that thing, whether it be selling, whether it be engineering, whether it be, marketing design, who knows? But those are really kind of strong, single characteristic people who are the best in the business at that thing. In the RevOps world, I truly believe you need generalists. So I like to hire people who have a spectrum of experience, someone who can think very high level, someone who can process a bunch of data and turn it into something that actually makes sense and is communicable. And then the third thing is to make sure that they're not afraid to get their hands dirty. And so from that perspective, I want learners to begin with, and I wanted that prior to AI, or prior to the AI boom we're experiencing right now. And so if you take those same people and make them learners in the AI world, it's the same outcome, right? The same type of people I want there. I don't think we're at a point now where you can bring in someone who's got 10 years of amazing AI product experience. It just doesn't exist. So maybe I'm sure there'll come a day, but I really value the generalist. And I think that AI has really just allowed us to scale our impact with the same size team. So not that I'm removing roles, but that I am kind of augmenting and amplifying the impact of our team, even with a relatively small team. And most companies have a relatively small RevOps teams. There's not a lot with like a 20-person team.
Right.
So you have to figure out how you can utilize it, and how my team can utilize it. The one piece I will say with it that my team laments at times, but also appreciates, is that once you start using AI, especially for strategic analysis, for data analysis, for impact mapping, whatever it might be. This was my expectation of you as far as quality. Now it's this, because I know that you can get a lot of it here. And so then I need your human brain to take that and turn that into something that you can actually bring and operationalize internally. And so from that perspective, there's a lamenting with it, but I do think that it's helped them feel a lot more confident in their projects, initiatives, and things like that.
I mean, that's a good point, because I think a year ago, people were like pretending like they thought of it and using ChatGPT, right? And now it's like, have you gone there first and formulated your idea using your AI as your thought partner, and then bringing it to the next level? I think if you're not doing that, then you're probably going to be looking for a job. I mean, what you said about that generalist, I think, is really important. And that's where I've shifted to. So maybe, I don't know, several years back, it'd be like, well, we need somebody for specifically marketing ops, and we need somebody for this. But priorities change, and you're constantly working on, if your company has like a blueprint or, goals for the quarter, for the year. So we need to be able to have those generalists shift to different parts of the bow tie if we're talking about the revenue, customer journey. So I think that's a really important thing to think about, and having folks that are really great with data, but also understand the tech side, I think is the challenge, to be able to have that person. And then they can, if they're curious, they're going to learn it, right? They're going to dive in, and that's a personality trait, right? Wanting to learn and grow and evolve, which I think we're all trying to do right now.
Yeah, it's a very true point. And one thing I recently wrote an article kind of more about RevOps leadership and how to excel, called 70-30-25, where 70% of your time is really being a great leader, 30% of your time is setting the standard and operationalizing and independently contributing to things, and then 25% is learning. And the point here that's relevant is, I truly believe the 25% of learning happens outside of your main project work, your main work hours. I think the thing that humans are so great at is connecting dots, using the context that only they have, right? AI, for whatever you want to look at it, ChatGPT, other large learning models, or language models, whatever else it might be. It's not always going to be able to connect all the dots, because it's not going to have everything that's up to date, all of the qualitative information that you have internally at an org. And I think to do that, your brain has to be in a more relaxed space. So every day, RevOps people know you're being asked for charts, you're being asked questions, you're delivering on heads down work, you're delivering proposals, all of this stuff. And the brain is really fixated on delivering things. And so it's not at a place where it's going to receive information. And so I truly believe that the best learners are doing this. You're listening to a podcast while you're working out. You're listening to a class while you're cooking dinner. You're reading an interesting article that comes up, and things like that's kind of where you get shower light bulb ideas. And that's really the difference between people who are doing really well right now and people who will struggle. Is you don't need to work 80 hours, but you should spend some time outside of work really allowing yourself to receive new information, because realistically, it's useful for your job now. It's going to be useful for every job you have in the future. It's going to help you keep up with the times. And it's also going to make things more enjoyable. I don't know about you all, but if I'm not learning, I get bored. And so it's a great way to stay up to date, to augment your skills. And my team does that a great job of that right now. So I'm definitely trying to capitalize on it.
That's great. I can totally relate. This is part of a big reason why I'm doing this podcast, because I'm trying to learn. I want to share the learnings with other people in the community. But some people aren't podcast people. I'm a podcast person. I like to listen to it when I jog, or if I'm outside, or especially if it's wintertime and I'm on the treadmill and I can't talk on the phone when I'm out walking. But those kind of things are applicable. Like, I use my personal life, and it helps me not just become more efficient, but more effective. And I think we all have to challenge ourselves to do things differently. I've been doing this a long time. The tech stack looks completely different than it did even 2 years ago at my last company. And you have to rethink some of the legacy tools and how you're using things and how you're approaching. And you can't do that if you're, have your blinders on and you're just stuck in your old ways and things like that. So continuous learning, I think, is just critical in general. It's what I teach my kid. I want him to always be learning and sharing. So I love that. I love that approach, and I think it's definitely great advice. So tell me a little bit about what you are working on now.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting time, especially so for our company, we have a mixture of field sales reps and digital, or not digital reps, virtual reps is what I should say, who are working not necessarily in the field, but over the phones and email. And I think the biggest piece of my focus right now is how do I scale the top of the funnel efforts. So we have a relatively small inside sales team. There's only so many humans that we have. There's only so many humans you can hire. So how do I help set them up for success by doing the things that they can't do at a large scale? So we talked about an AI SDR, right? How can I engage a bunch of lukewarm to even slightly cold leads without having to make them sit there for 4 hours a day, just sending off email after email after email, making cold call after cold call. And so that's really where I'm focused on, because if you get the bump at the top of the funnel, it's going to allow you to have everything trickle down to later production. I think people will oftentimes start further down the funnel and then get mad when you don't see the results. But it's harder if you're trying to get water from a waterfall midway down where it's splashing everywhere than if you're getting at the top of the stream. And now you've got really good, high quality leads that you can work with. So I think for me, that's one thing I focus on. But the other piece that is constantly relevant is being able to, in addition to just creating strategy and using it to help you kind of analyze data and things like that, I think the big piece of it is how do you improve the lives of those that work for you? And I think like the three things anyone who's interested in working on AI should do is start out with just some data work in Clay. I think it's a great way to get comfortable with it, see a little bit about cleaning up your own information and stats, and then start to get into the strategy side, right? Start having a conversation with ChatGPT. Again, these are both entry-level type of tools. Start to get familiar with it. And then the third thing that everyone really should do is look at the 5 things that your team, sales team, for example, or your support team find the most annoying part of their jobs. Automate one of it or support one of it. And so there are so many little wins out there. And I think if you try to implement something across the board, you either start talking about a highfalutin concept of AI, or you don't make an immediate impact and it takes you 12 to 18 months, which is a smaller company or a startup company for RevOps is not an option.
You don't have time for that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. That's great advice. Just asking the team, like, what are the things you hate doing? And what are the things that we can help to automate for you? And those are big wins too. If you can knock one of those off somebody's plate, then you are in a really good space to win their adoption, win their hearts, and show the value of what you're doing. I think you've said a lot of really great things. I mean, how has AI, the evolution over the last year or so, putting yourself this time, the end of last year, how has that changed your approach, your strategy, what you're doing in general?
Yeah, I think it is a great question, and thinking through it a little bit on the fly, I think that the 2 ways that it's impacted most is it makes me more confident in the recommendations I make to solve problems. It also has a very nice ability to help positively impact the lives of those who have stressful hour-by-hour roles within a company. So your sales team, your support team, I've worked in support, I've run a support team before, I know the stress there. I work heavily with the sales team now. I've gone out and been a salesperson for a few weeks here and there as we try to test new tools so I can really see what it's like. Those are the type of people that you want their hearts and minds, and you want them to be successful. At the end of the day, the more successful they are, the more successful the company is. The more successful the company is, the better you look, right? It's a symbiotic life cycle there. And so the 2 places that really help me are confidence, which I think is a big thing, as opposed to people poking a bunch of holes in something. You now have thought through all of those elements and have reasoning for it, or a logic behind the decision. And then 2 is we're able to do things that, so for example, we created a way for our sales reps in the field to be able to click a button and read out what they want it to do in Salesforce, and then it will go now log it, set it up, do whatever it needs to do in Salesforce. And so now we have a voice to text, voice to action tool that we didn't have before. So for field reps driving around, it's really, really useful. That's something I couldn't have even sort of created any of that before an AI model existed, right? So it does, in addition to the confidence of kind of more of the corporate side, it enables me to help give reps tools that actually make or business as usual, life in the day improvements, which again, they can then focus on the things that humans are really good at and not need to spend a bunch of time doing clerical work or things that, don't take your human mind.
Yeah. Oh, you're going to have to drop me a little bit of instructions on that, how you did that, because I can feel myself wanting to do that. People walking around, we go to trade shows a lot and just put their note in and have it all. That seems like, like that's some low hanging fruit there. So if you don't mind sharing, I don't know if you have a little tips or one sheeter on the steps on that, but I think that would be a great takeaway. Selfishly, I want it because I think that'd be a huge win for our team. Absolutely. I think, if I'm thinking about people listening, how do you recommend, going to leadership, getting the buy-in? You said you had support with your leadership. Is there an approach you recommend, maybe steps that you took that the team, a RevOps leader, could go to their CRO or CEO and maybe get budget for something or make that case?
Yeah, I think the beauty of a lot of AI tools, so think of a Clay, think of just ChatGPT, obviously more of a business license there. These things aren't expensive. Use the budget you already have, spend a couple $100 a month on this stuff, or even less, right? ChatGPT, I think, is like $20 a month. You can let your whole team use it. So at the kind of unlimited level. So use the things you have available that are lower cost, prove some value with them, and then start to be able to ideate on how you can make larger scale improvements with other tools that might cost more. With all the shopping around you can do, realistically, a lot of tools can be way less expensive than you think, especially if you're creative and can create a machine on your own by utilizing different things to put together. But that's what I tell people all the time, is start with stuff that doesn't cost you a lot. Build the confidence of your leadership team, get them excited about it. The more excited they are to investigate it, the more they're going to let you go. The important thing, though, is to constantly explain that this is research. This is the goal I believe that I can accomplish with this. But if we find out it doesn't work, great, we'll cut it and we'll move on to the next thing. Not everything you try in the AI world is going to be perfect. Some tools don't work the way they're supposed to or claim to. Some tools work, but it just doesn't fit your operational flow. So again, start small, get some, momentum with your leadership and colleagues. Prove to them that this is not, out to cut jobs. It's not out to replace human thinking. It's just there as a tool that can help make people's lives easier and make your strategies more relevant and accurate with kind of within the business and its reality.
I love it. That's great advice. I want to get to our rapid fire questions here because I'm just very curious. I took some time to find out what RevOps leaders are asking about AI, and I'm trying to get every guest to weigh in on that. So we'll just go real quickly here through these questions. So we may have covered some of this earlier, but what's the very first place you tell a RevOps team to start with AI?
Yeah, I go back to, I'm going to cheat and say 3, but it's start with data enrichment, move to helping analyze data and creating strategic takeaways, amalgamating both qualitative and quantitative data. And then the third piece is pick the 5 things that your team, your sales team or support team hates to do. Fix one of them with AI. And that's a great way to get an introduction to it, get some familiarity with it, and you'll be well on your way to developing your skills. Great.
Is RevOps data actually AI ready today, or are most teams just automating garbage?
Depends. It depends. But I think, again, that's the beauty of some of these tools is you can clean some of the garbage before you are using it and processing it. Old stuff will at times be garbage. So you just have to work through that. But again, it's a lifelong cleaning process. I don't think there's ever a world in which everything's going to be so clean that it's perfect you can throw in, even at the largest Fortune 500 companies. So it's something you just work with. I don't think it's something that should prevent you from getting your hands dirty in the AI world.
Same rules apply. Bad data in, bad data out.
Yep.
What's one AI use case in RevOps you've seen actually work in the real world?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably the option or the initiative I shared a minute ago about just being able to create a voice command while you're driving around as a rep, not have to sit down at the end of the day and do 40 minutes on your computer typing stuff in, is probably one of the coolest things.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of stuff that's benefited my team in ways, but stuff that the average internal person's not going to care about. They just care about the result and the recommendation implementation.
Yeah, I'm definitely doing that. How do you measure real ROI from AI and RevOps?
It's hard. I think that the biggest thing, which still exists, is how do you tease apart the things that revenue operations actions are doing versus what a sales team is doing or what a support team is doing, because they're so intertwined. If you're doing things well, you're such an integrated part of that flow. What I think is, can you help your team, your internal sales team, hit their goals? And beyond that, can you show that you're getting leads from this process? Your accuracy of recommendations is improving. Right now, you're 75% of your projects land positively as opposed to 50% previously. So that's the type of stuff you look at. Again, I think it's hard to tease apart, but when the company's making money, everybody's happy, and you just want to keep that trend going.
Right. Will AI replace RevOps, or will RevOps leaders who use AI replace those who don't?
I think the latter. I mean, I think in the same way that I really don't position it as replacing everybody's job, even when you're talking about sales, support, other forms of operations, things like that. So I believe that those who know how to work with it will go further, and everybody's lives and job descriptions will just adjust. But for those that are generalists, those that want to learn, spend that 25% outside of work learning, your job will be there forever.
Words of wisdom. Well, Jordan, I really appreciate your time today on the show. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, and look forward to all the takeaways. I'll make sure to include them in the show notes. Everybody, this has been another episode of AI Powered RevOps. Have a great day. Thank you, Jordan.
Thanks so much for having me.